Welcome to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Big Cat KZ. Thank you so much for listening in. The Big Cat Lounge is where we interview guests in a casual lounge setting from all over the world. We are on the way to achieving Big Cat International status. New episodes are dropped weekly on all places you listen to podcasts. Please rate and subscribe to help us grow. Welcome to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Big Cat KZ, and today's guest comes from Boston, where he is the best-selling author for Screw Being Shy. He is a creator who has over 500 podcast episodes. He is also the founder of VU Dream, a virtual reality tech company based in Boston. At age 12, he started a YouTube channel, which grew to 35,000 plus subscribers. And at age 15, he started the world's #1 Minecraft server, experiencing a six-figure business. We welcome Mark Metry to the Big Cat Lounge podcast.
Yo, what's up, man? Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, man, I mean, I always identified as a big cat, so I appreciate you for creating this lounge, man, and having me.
Thank you. So tell us, what are you up to these days? Like, what does a typical week look like for Mark Metry?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. So for me, what I usually do is, I have my podcast, Social Anxiety Society. I try to record that twice a week. And then, I plan the episodes. I write them ahead of time. I do research. And then I take like my personal life like very seriously in terms of like my habits and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, I usually wake up around like 6:30 and I have my morning routine. I go outside for a walk, I meditate, I go to the gym, and then usually starting from around like 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., that's usually where I dedicate that time for like writing, for my individual, like any kind of creative work. And then usually by like starting like later in the afternoon, like starting around 1, 2, that's where I start to have like all my meetings for the day. Mm-hmm. And like today, for example, what were my meetings? So far, I've had, I did another podcast interview. I had a conversation with this investor guy for a potential project we might be starting in the future. I connected with the founder of this coffee company. And then I had a client call, and then now I'm here. So I usually try to structure my day like that. And then usually by like 6 or 7, I, take the rest of the time off and I just like eat dinner and I just hang out with people and just relax until the next day.
Yeah. And it's really important to be intentional and structured with your schedule, because if you don't really pinpoint, different tasks that you're going to do in different hours, you most likely won't do it unless you're going to recall with memory. But it's very difficult if you don't, plan out in advance.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of the times, like most people, like they go through school, and then for the most part, school kind of like gives you a schedule, it gives you some kind of a structure, but then you get out of school. And a lot of the times, like, unless you've been taught like how to do that for yourself, it could definitely be very, like confusing, yeah, I mean, I'm someone like, I've always done my own thing. I've always run my own thing. So I, have like, maybe I guess more experience than some people, at least my age, who kind of do this because I've been doing it for a while. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely quarantine and COVID definitely showed me the importance of that, of just being stuck, inside and not doing anything. So super, super important. It's very good for your brain too.
Yeah, it really is. Like I try to be as intentional as I can, because a lot of the times I'm stuck looking at the screens because I'm working with big data.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to have 2 monitors just because there's a lot of information I'm looking through. So it's just, but being more diligent with breaking up my day to like go outside for a walk, or maybe if I can have a call where I don't need to be attached to my, a spreadsheet or a document or something, then I could do it. But yeah, it's just putting it into the schedule.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of the times too, like, for me, like on my podcast, like I spend years like interviewing the world's most successful people. And a lot of the times, like you look at things that people do, you're like, oh shit, like how did you start like $1 billion company, or like how did you recover from like mental health problems, or like a lot of these big things. And a lot of the times it's just like, oh, you just wake up every morning and you just like do these certain things, you know? And I think a lot of the times people don't see results in their life because they're not consistent enough, you know? And so your schedule is just like the game map for that every day. You know what I mean? And like if you can add these little things every day, then you look up like 4 or 5 years later and you're like, oh wow, I like did all this stuff and I didn't really even realize I was doing it because I just, you know, told myself to go for a walk every day, or I told myself to go to the gym every day, or I told myself to eat healthy every day, or I told myself to meditate every day. And then, you know, you look up 5 years later and you're like, oh wow, you're in a much better position than the majority of people, just because you do like these little simple things each and every day. And then people ask you like, dude, how'd you do that? And you're just like, I just like did these things, you know, every day. I didn't overthink. I just went for it. So it's super interesting.
It's almost like a mind reset too, because if you're doing the same kind of thing in the same environment, I mean, it may get boring after a while, or you may just drift off. So you need to switch it up to a certain extent and go through different types of exercises. Maybe it's like meditation, maybe it's breathing. It just depends.
Yeah, man, it's so important. And I mean, it's funny because, you know, I used to feel like, you know, if anything, I faced that problem for most of my life. Like I would just, oh, it's like the same old thing. Or like you go to school every day, or you go to your job every day. And like, I remember there was a time in my life where, you know, like I was making a lot of money, you know, on paper, so to speak, my life was perfect, but then I was just like so bored and like, I was so exhausted all the time. And then you have to realize that like, you know, like the mind, the human brain is so interesting because it can normalize anything, you know, and a lot of the times, like when you do the same stuff every single day, then if anything, it kind of feels like you're stuck because you're doing the same stuff every day and you feel like you can't do anything different. You know, that's why I think like certain habits, like for example, like meditation, like that literally teaches your brain how to think differently, like inherently. Like that literally rewires your brain cells, and like that helps you not be bored, or it helps you do the same things without getting like that mundane feeling of like, oh, it's just like another day, you know? And so
And right now, you know, there's just so much information because, you know, because of quarantine, because of lockdown, a lot of us are, you know, are just on social media, or they're, you know, constantly scrolling and looking through information. So it's like there's so much to consume. So how do you know like who to follow, or like picking the right you know, mentor to really search for? How do you know like what to look for? There's just so
it's definitely difficult, man. And yeah, it's definitely difficult. And like, to be honest with you, like over the last 2 years, like since 2020 and COVID quarantine happened, you know, I feel like a lot of people have been like exposed. Not everyone, but
yeah.
To be honest with you, I honestly kind of lost respect for a lot of people that I used to look up to. Because of COVID. Like I've actually had to delete some of my podcast episodes of people who I was associated with, because I just think what they were saying was harmful, or just like not the best. Like I don't want to associate with that kind of person. So it's definitely a huge problem for sure. And I still go through it from time to time. You know what I think it is I just think that like if there's someone out there who is doing what you want to be doing, then just like learn from them, you know, like see what they're posting on their Instagram, and just like, you know, pay attention to them like every day for like a month. And I feel like if you do that, then you can kind of, you know, tell. Like a lot of people, you know, come to me, you know, for like anxiety, social anxiety, you know, confidence, kind of public speaking related stuff, because I'd like post content about it, you know, every single day. So it's very, very, very interesting. So, you know, it's definitely a struggle, but I think like just trying to look into people, reading their books, watching their TED Talks, seeing what they post on social media, I think all that stuff is very important. I don't know. What do you think? How do you sort through it?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is going through the information, like going through the podcast, but then after a certain period, you need to start implementing because you can continue to just, read and listen to other stories and other experiences, but if you don't actually like implement and do the, take action, then there's I mean, you can, there's almost no point. You should try and give back as much as you can, and that's what I've learned over the years, just really to knowledge share and be open. And that's why with my podcast, I'm just giving another opportunity for a platform for those to speak what's on their mind, and just to really, express and freely share, because a lot of people have a lot that's in their thoughts, but it's just they're not jotting it down, or they're just not talking with one another to converse and just have a conversation to reflect upon.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I started my podcast. Like I remember in 2017 being in a spot in my life where I just didn't really know what to do. And like I just didn't have answers to my solutions. And I was like, what's a way where I can solve this problem? Well, I kind of thought back and I'm like, like some of my biggest insights, some of my biggest like realizations came when, I was just like sitting down one-on-one with someone, just trying to have like an honest conversation with them, And so I think it's about realizing that and then trying to create like tools and systems in your life to sort of automate that, and I think if you can do that, you can integrate it into your life to where it's not like some random thing that you do, but it's just a part of everything that you do. And so, it's like why I am where I am. It's just like, I just figured out a system to have as many one-on-one conversations with really smart people as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. And then it's not even necessarily work, because you're just loving what you're doing, because you're doing a lot of the same things you wanted to do, and you're reflecting upon it like every week or every month, whatever you're looking through your tasks and looking at your challenges and your wins. So it's always it's grained into you.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference is that like thousands of people, I mean, more than thousands of people listen to it. And then, depending if I get a podcast sponsor, then I get paid thousands of dollars to do it too. So that's like like a triple win-win. And like, there's that, there's like that quote from the Joker, and it's something like, like if you do something really well, like the Joker from Batman, I don't remember what exactly he said, but he said like, if you do something really well, then why do it for free? So that's also part of the equation too.
Today's sponsor is Anchor FM app. Go download the free Anchor app today to get started. You can find it at your Play Store or App Store. It's everything you need to make a podcast, and it distributes everything for you so it can be heard on multiple platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and many more. This is what I'm currently using right now to edit and record my podcast, and you can do so from your phone or computer. And the tools are really easy to use to help document the Big Cat Lounge journey. So what are you waiting for? Go today and download it.
I guess, how are you able to manage, your time effectively to tackle the items that will give you the best output? So you think in the morning, you said that's maybe a lot of the creative portion, or like, how are you able to structure and get the best output?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that to answer your question, it starts off with the understanding of like, you have to master the internal machine, because like, if you're trying to put all your energy in, if you have a job or whatever, like in computers or whatever, if you're just putting inputs and outputs in the external world, then, you're only going to get so far. But for me, like, I'm able to do everything I do because I meditate every day, I exercise, I move my body every day, I eat healthy every day, I sleep well every day. I think doing those things gives me the ability to master whatever, and so I think it comes with the understanding of you have to master the internal system first. And I think most people aren't really focusing on that or to a certain degree. And I honestly have no idea how I would be doing what I'm doing if I didn't do those things. And same with a lot of other smart people that I've talked to, because when you can do that, it gives you like the internal investment to be able to handle anything that comes in your way, and so even if you have the perfect life on the outside, but your life on the inside may be, like very chaotic, you're always stressed out, you feel like you never have enough time, like that's an indication that you need to dive more into your inner world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really just breaking down the time. We all have the same amount of time. It's just, where's it going? And there's so many distractions if you let them take you away from your goal or your vision.
Oh yeah, man. And every year there's more and more and more and more and more distractions, and
It's
that's why you
fun.
just got to be real with yourself, and figure it out, because it's different for everyone, and I think the most important thing is that, like, at the end of the day, when you put your head down to go to sleep, like, you have no regrets, and like you understand that like you did everything that you could to like be yourself. And I
Mhm.
think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, yeah. And right now it's really extremely challenging because a lot of the children, they're doing virtual learning, so it's, for them it's like even more distracting, because before they'd have to go to school and they'd have,
Yeah.
sometimes they'd have to put their devices away, maybe not. So it's just really now like more of a support system where you're going to need to have, those that are around in the same room or in the same area to just really try and guide them into the right direction, because if they're not, there's going to be just, overwhelming. There's going to be so much for them if they don't have a structure, because I'm not sure how it is set up, but it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think life is always challenging, and I think it's always been challenging, but I think the problems sometimes change,
Yeah.
um so like, dude, I mean, when I was in school, man, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I was like, I wasn't even on social media when I was a kid, but like, dude, I was so distracted, and I was distracted from like having ADD and like having anxiety, so I think people are always distracted. It's just like, you know, are those distractions destroying you? Because I think there's also good distractions, right? And it just depends on your goals in life, like if someone out there is like living in, poverty and they're getting abused, like the goal just may be to like survive one day, whereas someone else who may have money, maybe, has like more skills, has more knowledge, their goal is maybe to like, oh, I want to start, a business. And sometimes it's both of them. So I think the most important thing is that you just look at your goals, and you don't compare yourself to anybody negatively. I think comparing yourself to other people can actually be a good thing at times if done correctly. Like I think all the time, like, oh, when I meet certain people, I'm like, oh, that's just like a younger version of myself, and I'm not comparing myself negatively to them. And I look at them from a place of like inspiration and a place of example. And I think that's how you can do it, because especially when you're young, it's almost impossible to not compare yourself. Like there's literally, a lot of people don't know is that there's literally a part of your brain that has specialized to compare yourself to other people. So I think that's a huge aspect, and that happens whether you're on social media or not. You're not on social media, you're in school, you're not in school, you're virtual, you're in person. So it's definitely like being a human is itself a problem. And
Yeah.
then there is the, current environment, that we happen to be living in that changes constantly. That is also a potential problem. So it's a whole lot of problems, man, but there's also a whole lot of solutions out there.
Yeah, there really is. And there's not always different approaches and different ways of looking at it. And if you just continue to reinvent and change your strategy, we can always combat it. And there's always ways to overcome. One great tip that you'd have for content creators, something that you could really bring back.
I think the most important thing is like either meditating or exercising. And the reason why I say that is because I know for me, like my best ideas come to me when I'm moving.
Yeah.
So for me, like whenever I go to the park, or I'm literally always outside. So whenever I walk, like I always, like my brain just moves better. And then I just pull out my phone, or I just like tell Siri to like, write some notes down for me of any ideas. And then I like go home or later or the next day or the week later, then I'm like, I expand on that idea. So yeah. And then the same for meditation, because like I don't go on social media before I post on social media. That's something that I've learned.
Uh,
And like before I go on social media, I always meditate, because meditation is like what helps put you like in your own world. And when you go on social media, you step into other people's worlds. And that can be quite tricky because you don't know what people's worlds contain. It could involve all kinds of toxic stuff. It could involve distractions, just things that aren't priorities for you. So for me, like what I've learned is like I always meditate, and then I post on social media, and then I like look at other people's content for the most part. And I find that's like what works best for me, if that answers your question.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about some of the programs that you offer on markmetry.com?
Yeah, I mean, so I used to be super big into like kind of marketing. So like I would sell like a link. I had a course on LinkedIn because I have like over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. I don't really put that out there or promote it. And then I also have like a podcast course. I also don't put that out there and promote it. And so for me, like my main shift is like I'm trying to help people with like anxiety, social anxiety, people who are very shy, people who are maybe a little too introverted, people who struggle with like confidence, energy, like their mindset, their mental health. And so that for me is what I'm trying to push out, because I think that's like the most important thing that I could possibly be doing with my time. And then if people are interested, if you just go to my website, markmetry.com/program, you'll see what I'm talking about. But
yeah, and I'm on day 22 of the course. And like one of the things, I think it was today or yesterday, where you said like your face makes you look naturally annoyed. So you should try and like smile more. It makes a big difference. And that's so true. Like whenever I'm doing work or anything, you know, you may be like frustrated or in the moment, but if you actually are looking in the mirror, I'm sure you have a frown or just a negative feel to it.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's funny because like one of the things that, you know, like, of course, like, yeah, if you smile, like if you're just like by yourself, like, yeah, you might feel a little bit happier. But another part about that that's really interesting too is that like if you study, you know, human like evolutionary biology, you basically learn that most of how we perceive each other and like most of what people think about communication actually has very little to do with words, right? And like this makes sense. Like this is why I was probably bullied, and like this is probably why I didn't have too many friends growing up, because as an introvert, like, you know, you have all kinds of ideas and thoughts, and you're very introspective and you're very thoughtful in your head. But a lot of times, like that's just one part of the equation. If you can't accurately communicate that, then no one's going to ever understand you. And like what's really interesting about that is you realize that people for thousands and thousands of years have communicated not just through words. And what I'm talking about is actually through facial expressions. So for example, like if you are, you know, if we're alive, you know, 2000 years ago, and I belong in one tribe or like one group or one country, and I'm just like walking in the woods trying to, you know, collect berries or whatever people were doing back then.
Yeah.
And then I see someone else that's like, you know, far away, and we both see each other. You know, I have no idea if that person is going to kill me, if they're going to try to kidnap me, if they're just going to like walk past me. And so a lot of the times, like our brains have evolved to detect people's facial structures to actually see what they mean. And so obviously today, it's not like you look at people's faces like, hey, is this person going to kill me or kidnap me or not? But it's all, like the way that I describe it is your face, it's almost like a signpost for other people. And a lot of the times, individually in social situations, your facial structure can actually be what I call like a biochemical runway. So for example, like, you know, I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were kind of talking about a similar thing. And what I was telling him is that like, you know, and like the exact scenario was that like, he was telling me on how he was like at a party or he was at an event. And then someone made a joke with him that a lot of the times, like people who have social anxiety or people who seem nervous or shy, people who are not shy will try to like mess with you. They'll try to make jokes with you. And a lot of the times, like, because like when you enter into a social environment, your brain is so chaotic. It's so stressed out. It's moving very fast. You actually like can't even tell if someone is making a joke with you, or sometimes you'll take it seriously and like you'll think that the other person is making fun of you. And when I was telling him is that like what you can do is like if you're at a social event and whether it's you walk in the event or you walk in the room, like just pretend to look like a friendly person, like try to smile, obviously like don't try to fake anything, be authentic, but you have to realize that this social anxiety, it's been, this is like an algorithm that's been running in your head for tens of years, like I know for me, I had social anxiety for like 10, 12 years. And a lot of the times, like when you're in the social event, you'll just naturally not smile and sort of take it seriously. But then what happens is because of that, your nervous system interprets it as if like there's a threat. Whereas if you're smiling and like you have like that tiny boost of like happiness or whatever you want to call it, it acts as a biochemical runway. And like instead of your mind and your thoughts sliding towards, oh, this person doesn't like me or they hate me or they're making fun of me, when you're smiling in the moment, all of a sudden it gives you a little bit more control to be like, oh, this person's making a joke. Oh, let me laugh and let me, listen to what they say. And so if that made any sense, like that's why it's super important to keep that in mind. But how is the rest of the course going for you?
Oh, it's going well. It's going pretty good. A lot of it's just like positive reinforcement. Like some of this I already maybe necessarily knew, but it's not implementing it in my daily activities or just being mindful about it. So I'm learning a tremendous amount. It's been great thus far. I think I'm about halfway done. Yeah, a little bit over halfway.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know it's more actionable like later on, and yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is that you just, you try to do these things, and you may not do them perfectly, you may not, do an amazing job every time, but again, like if you do, each one of these things, and you're able to practice at it a daily moment, and just try to see like which ones resonate with you, and trying to journal about it, try to write it down. Like if you do these things like in 3 months, you'll really change not just how you feel, but also how other people, perceive you. And then if you do that for another month, then you can really, change your life.
And what does the rest of the year look like? Do you think you'll have any more like speaking engagements? I know before you're doing a lot of conferences.
I hope so.
Are you able to do any like more virtual, or how is that coming about?
Yeah. I mean, so they're all virtual now. It kind of sucks. I thought we were gonna turn the corner with COVID.
Yeah.
It's so sad, man.
Yeah,
It sucks, man. I like the last talk I did in person was in March. So it was 6 months ago, and it was at a high school in New York.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird because everyone had masks, but it's a small price to pay. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I hope this COVID crap goes away.
Yeah, it needs to. It truly does. Yeah, is there anything else you want to let the Big Cat Lounge community know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is that like who you are, like how you see yourself on the outside or how other people see you on the outside, that's not an accurate indication of like who you actually are. And like I believe that everybody to some degree has a lion inside of them. And then that's so important because like for me, like if anybody looked at me like before the age of like 18 or even then 18, 19, 20, like people would have no idea like what I was doing today. And so what I would say is like, don't let how you view yourself now, like don't let this moment in reality determine the way that you view the way that you view yourself. Because a lot of the times, like for you to actually become that lion that you are deep down, it takes 5 years, it takes 10 years. So what I would say is like, understand that, accept that, and then just like start taking actions day by day with the understanding of like, hey, I'm going to take the long-term route and I'm really going to, like work on this so that, in the future, I'm even better. And so I think that's super, super, super important because I wish someone told me that, because so often I would look at myself and I'd be like, man, like I'm going to be a loser forever, or like I'm going to be stuck like this forever. But if you can accept that, life doesn't change overnight, it takes 10 years, and you can start to like put in the work, put in the priorities, the actions each day, you're going to be the actual lion who you are inside, but on the outside years and years later. So that's the last thing I'd say, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. If we wanted to follow your journey, I know you have a free newsletter, you have your book, you also have coaching. Is there anything else, any specific places we should look?
Yeah, I think the best thing is like if people go to my website, MarkMetry, markmetry.com, there will be an email box and you can just put your email in there. And yeah, you'll be signed up for my newsletter. I shoot out like 2 or 3 educational articles all about like social anxiety, mental health. So if you sign up for that newsletter and then you get an email from me, and you can just respond directly to that email and it will go directly to me. And I respond to like 100% of those. So that's the best place. And then of course, like my podcast, Social Anxiety Society. That's a big one too.
We are accepting applications if you think you have what it takes to be a big cat and be a guest on the show. Email us at bigcatlounge@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Big Cat Lounge podcast. Hope to see you soon.